Rumblefish by S.E. Hinton. Day 4. Chapter 5. Steve went home, and I went home, because I didn't want to keel over in the streets and because I figured the motorcycle boy might be there. It was still a little early for the old man. I ran into Cassandra on the way up the stairs. I mean, really ran into her. Cassandra thought she was the motorcycle boy's girlfriend. She was a weirdo, if you ask me. I couldn't stand her. See, she'd been a student teacher at the high school the year before, and the motorcycle boy was in one of her classes. She flipped out over him. Girls were chasing him all the time anyway. It wasn't just because he was good looking. He was different looking. Anyway, he could have any chick he wanted, and what he saw in Cassandra, I don't know. He must have been sorry for her. There she was, college educated, and from a good family, and from a nice home on the other side of town, and she moves here, into an old apartment, and follows a motorcycle boy around. She wasn't even pretty. I didn't think so, anyway. Steve said she was, but I didn't think so. She'd walk around barefoot like a hick, and didn't wear any makeup. Almost every time I'd see her, she'd be carrying a cat. I don't like cats. I didn't go as far as Biff Wilcox did, use them for target practice with a .22 pistol, but I didn't like them. And she tried to talk like the motorcycle boy, try to say things that meant something. She didn't fool me. Hi, she said to me. I waited for her to move over so I could go up the stairs, but she didn't. Heck, it was my stairs, for Pete's sake. I just looked at her. I never tried to pretend I liked her. Well, move it, I said finally. Charming child, she said. I said something to her I wouldn't normally say to a chick, but she really got on my nerves. She didn't even flinch. He don't like you, I went on, any more than he liked any of the rest of them. He doesn't like me now, period, she said. She held out her arms. They were covered with tracks. She was shooting up. See? I was surprised for a second, then disgusted. If he ever caught me doing dope, he'd break my arm. He'd done almost that much for me, she said. She had always seemed stuck up, like she thought her and the motorcycle boy belonged to some super league club or something. She wasn't so sassy now. I'm not hooked, she said, like I was her best friend. I just thought it might help. I thought he was good. He was gone for good. One thing the motorcycle boy couldn't stand was people who did dope. He didn't even drink, most of the time. There was a rumor around that he'd killed a junkie once. I never cared to ask him about it. One day out of the clear blue sky, he said to me, I ever catch you doing dope, I'll bust your arm. And he'd do it too. Since that was one of the few times he ever paid any attention to me, I took it serious. I looked away from Cassandra and spit over the railing. There was something about her that really got on my nerves. She took the hint and went on down the stairs. I found the motorcycle boy in the apartment, sitting on the mattress against the wall. I asked him if there was anything to eat in the house, but he didn't hear me. I'd gotten used to that. His hearing had been screwed up for years. He was colorblind, too. I found some crackers and sardines and milk. I ain't picky. I like about anything. I also found a bottle of Sneaky Pete and finished it off. The old man never kept count. I took off my shirt and washed out my knife cut again. It hurt real steady. Not bad, but steady, like a toothache. I'd really be glad when it quit hurting. Hey, I said to the motorcycle boy, don't go anywhere till the old man gets home, okay? He dragged his eyes off the wall, looked at me slowly without changing his expression, and I could tell he was laughing. Poor kid, he says to me. Looks like you're messed up all the time, one way or another. I'm okay, I said. I was a little surprised he'd worry about me. See, I always thought he was the coolest guy in the world, and he was, but he never paid much attention to me. But that didn't mean anything. As far as I could tell, he never paid any attention to anything except to laugh at it. My father came in after a while. Both of you are home? He asked. He wasn't as drunk as usual. Hey, I need some money, I told him. I haven't seen you for quite some time, the old man said to the motorcycle boy. I was home last night. Indeed. I didn't notice. My father talked funny. He'd been to college, law school. I never told anybody that because nobody'd believe it. It was hard for me to believe it myself. I didn't think people who went to law school turned into drunks on welfare. But I guess some of them did. I need some money, I repeated. He looked at me thoughtfully. Me and the motorcycle boy didn't look anything like him. He was a middle-sized, middle-aged guy, kind of blonde and balding on top, light blue eyes. He was the kind of person nobody ever noticed. He had a lot of friends, though, mostly bartenders. Russell James, he said suddenly, are you ill? Got cut in a knife fight, I told him. Really? He came over to take a look. What strange lives you two lead. I ain't so strange, I said. He gave me a $10 bill. And how about you? He asked the motorcycle boy. Did you have a nice trip? Yeah, went to California. How was California? It was one laugh after another. Even better than here, as amusing as this place is. The motorcycle boy looked straight through the old man, seeing something I couldn't see. I was hoping they wouldn't get started in on one of their long talks. Sometimes they'd go for days, like they didn't even see each other. Sometimes they'd start on something and talk all night. That wasn't much fun for me, since I couldn't understand half of what they said. It was hard for me to decide exactly how I felt about my father. I mean, we got along okay, never had any arguments, except when he thought I'd been swiping his wine. Even then, he didn't mind much. We didn't talk any either. Sometimes he'd ask me a question or something, but I could tell he was just trying to be polite. I'd tell him about a river bottom party or a fight or a dance, and he would just look at me like he didn't understand English. It was hard for me to respect him, since he didn't do anything. He drank all day out in bars, and came home and read and drank at night. That's not doing anything. But we got along okay, so I couldn't hate him or anything. I didn't hate him. I just wished I could like him better. I think, though, he liked me better than he did the motorcycle boy. He reminded the old man of our mother. She left a long time ago, so I didn't remember her. Sometimes he'd just stop and stare at the motorcycle boy like he was seeing a ghost. You are exactly like your mother, he'd tell him, and the motorcycle boy would just look at him with that blank, expressionless animal face. The old man never said that to me. I must look like her too, though. Russell James, my father said, settling down with a book and a bottle, please be more careful in the future. The motorcycle boy was quiet. For so long, I finally thought he was upset about Cassandra. She said she wasn't hooked, I told him. Even though I didn't like her, I thought maybe this would cheer him up. Who? He asked me, surprised. Cassandra. Oh, yeah. Well, I believe her. You do? Sure. You know what happened to people who didn't believe Cassandra? I didn't, my father said. The Greeks got him. Now see what I mean? What the heck did Greeks have to do with anything? You don't like her anymore, though, huh? I asked him. He didn't answer me. He just got up and left. I went to sleep right away. Smokey came by around midnight with his cousin, who had a car, so I went to the lake and drank beer with them. There were some girls there, and we built a fire and went swimming. When I got home, it was early in the morning. The old man woke up and said, Russell James, I heard a rumor going around that a policeman was determined to get one of you. Is it you or your brother? Both of us, but mostly him. I knew who he meant. The cop was a local who had hated us for years. I wasn't worried about that. I was a little worried that I might have got my side infected from swimming in the lake, but it looked all right. I was tired again, so I cut school and slept till noon. Chapter 6. That afternoon turned out to be more interesting than I bargained for. I got expelled, and Patty broke up with me. I went to school about 1 o'clock. I had to check in at the office and then let them know I was there. I told them I had been sick that morning, but was okay now. They didn't believe me, but I wasn't going to say I'd been to a beer blast till 5 in the morning. I had done the same thing lots of times before, so I was surprised when, instead of giving me a pass back to class, I was sent to see Mr. Harrigan, the guidance counselor. Rusty, he said, shuffling through some papers on his desk to let me know I was taking up his valuable time. You have been to see me before. Yeah, I said. I can't stand for people to call me Rusty. It makes me feel like I'm not wearing my pants or something. Too many times, he said. I was wondering what was coming. I mean, I didn't go in there and waste his time on purpose. All they had to do was quit sending me there. We have decided that we can no longer tolerate your kind of behavior. He went on to list all the things I had been sent to the office for that year. Fighting, swearing, smoking, sassing the teacher, cutting classes. It was quite a list, but I already knew about it. He acted like he was telling me something I didn't know about. My mind went kind of blank. There was something about Mr. Harrigan that made my mind go kind of blank, even when he was swatting me with a board like he had 2 or 3 times before. All of a sudden, I realized he was kicking me out of school. We have arranged for you to be transferred to Cleveland, he was telling me. Cleveland High was the school where they said everybody they didn't like. That didn't bother me, but Biff Wilcox and his gang ran Cleveland. Since our fight, Biff and me had left each other alone. He stayed in his neighborhood, I stayed in mine. But if I just walked into his home territory, I was a dead man. It'd be me against half the school. Biff had his chance to fight me fair. He wasn't going to try that again. Sure, I'd go to Cleveland. All I needed was a submachine gun and eyes in the back of my head. I don't want to go, I said. Look, I've done lots of things worse than cutting school for half a day. Why now? Rusty, he said, they are equipped to handle your kind in Cleveland. Yeah? They got bars on the windows and bulletproof vests? He just looked at me. Don't you think it's time you gave some serious thought to your life? Well, I had to worry about money, and whether or not the old man would drink up his check before I got part of it, and whether or not the motorcycle boy would pick up and leave for good, and I had a cop itching to blow my brains out. Now I was getting sent to Biff Wilcox's turf, so I didn't have much time for serious thinking about my life. I gave some serious thought about punching Mr. Harrigan. I mean, they were kicking me out anyway, but I was still a little hungover, so I decided not to waste the energy. You start at Cleveland next Monday, Rusty, Mr. Harrigan said. You are suspended until then. I won't go, I said. The alternative is the youth detention center. He rattled his papers again to show that my time was up. The youth detention center, big deal. Those guys had a lot of paperwork to get straightened out before they came after me. I had weeks to think of something to do before they showed up. I left his office with the intention of heading straight for his car and slashing his tires, but I ran into Coach Ryan in the hall. Rusty James, man, I'm sorry, he said. He really did look kind of sorry. I told him you were a good kid, he said. I told him you never gave me any trouble, which was a lie, since I gave him trouble. He just tried to laugh it off, but it didn't do any good. I couldn't talk him out of it. Don't worry about it, I told him. He looked at me like I had been sentenced to death. He must have really thought I loved that school. I didn't, but my friends were there, and it was easier to go to than somewhere where Biff Wilcox's friends were. Kid, he said to me, don't go getting into trouble, okay? I must have looked at him like he was nuts, because he went on, I mean trouble you can't handle. Sure, I said, and added, man. It made him so happy. I hoped to heck when I was grown I'd have better things to do than hang around some tough punk, hoping his rep would rub off on me. It really felt weird not being able to stay in school. I had always found something to do in the summer, though, and over Christmas, so I figured I'd get along. Nobody was in Benny besides Benny, and even though he was better than nobody, I don't like shooting pool without an audience. I went down the street and over a couple of blocks to Eddie and Joe's bar. A couple of guys who used to be in the Packers hung out there, but as soon as I went in, Joe, or maybe Eddie, threw me out. Then I tried Weston McCauley's place. He was there with some other people, but they were all spacey and nervous and dopey, doing horse. Junkies can't stand to be around straight people, so I left feeling really sad because Weston had been second lieutenant in the Packers. He had been the closest thing to a friend that the motorcycle boy had. The motorcycle boy didn't have any friends, I realized when I got over being sad about Weston. He had admirers and enemies, but I never heard anybody claim to be his friend. Then it was time for Patty to be getting home from school. She went to an all-girl Catholic school. Her mother didn't want her to be around boys. Patty thought this was really funny. She was the kind of girl who had boyfriends when she was 9. I waited for her at the bus stop, smoking a cigarette and fooling around, smarting off to people passing by. You'd be surprised at how many people are afraid of a 14-year-old kid. Patty hopped off the bus and went swinging on by me like she didn't even see me. Hey, I said, dropping my cigarette and running a couple of steps after her. What's up? She stopped sharply, glared at me, and really told me what I could do. What's with you? I asked her. I was getting mad myself. I heard all about your little party, she said. I must have looked as blank as I felt. She went on. Up at the lake, Marcia Kirk was there. She told me all about it. So what? What does that have to do with anything? Do you really think you can treat me like that? She started off swearing at me again. I wondered where she'd learned to swear so good, then remembered she'd been going with me for 5 months.